Welcome to ChannelWaves, the podcast where channel leaders share success strategies, best practices, and emerging trends. Brought to you by Structured Web. Here's your host, Steven Kellam.
Hey, welcome everybody to ChannelWaves. We appreciate everyone taking a little bit of time today. Today, we're going to dig into trust. And we're going to talk about what it takes for vendors to build trust with partners. I think it's going to be interesting to talk about what partners need to do to build trust with vendors. And I think one of the key things is what happens if it gets broken. Now, I'm an optimist, and I'm going to introduce you to Leslie in just a second. I know she's an optimist as well, too. I would almost say what really cool things can happen once trust is built is the flip side of what happened if trust is broken. So today, joining us in this discussion is Leslie Chiorazzi. Did I say that correctly?
Pretty good. Chiorazzi.
Joining us today is Leslie Chiorazzi, and Leslie is the managing partner of CMIT in Manhattan. So welcome, Leslie.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Thanks for having me.
The reason I asked Leslie to do a podcast is because when I met Leslie, I thought a couple things. One is I thought she's doing what I did 10 or 12 years ago. So I'm slightly jealous, maybe 15 years ago. Because running a managed service business was actually, sorry to everybody I'm working with today, might have been the coolest job I ever had. It was really cool. So when I met Leslie, I was like, okay, it's cool. She's doing what I used to do. And two, I felt like she was very opinionated. And I say opinionated in a very good way. And look, if you're going to run a managed service business in New York, in Manhattan, I think you have to have what we say, strong convictions.
For sure.
For sure. We met at the Bathgate conference, right? You were talking about the ins and outs of being a managed service provider.
We did. And then again at Forrester.
And one of the things Leslie was talking about on stage was about that trust relationship and how important that is. As a matter of fact, what are we end up calling this episode? If you break your trust,
to me.
you are.
Sorry.
If you break your trust, you're what?
Dead to me.
Dead to me, exactly. And I believe you said that on stage. And that caught my attention. I thought, look, in today's world, it's so important to have that trust. So what does that mean? And how does that help the relationship? So we're gonna walk through that today. But Leslie, before we jump into it, maybe you can tell everybody just a little bit about who you are, what you do, a little bit about your managed services. Because in today, boy, managed services is a lot more, can be a lot different than what it was when I was a managed service provider 15 years ago.
15 years ago, certainly. But a lot's changed, but also nothing's changed. So again, I own CMIT Solutions in Manhattan. My territory is Murray Hill. CMIT Solutions is a franchise. There are more than 250 locations across the country, all providing managed outsourced IT. Maybe in slightly different ways, maybe depending on the community or the vertical they serve. But I've been here for 8 years now, and my specialty is really healthcare and nonprofit, along with hospitality. And yeah, we met at that conference, and I get asked to speak quite a bit on this topic around the vendor relationship to managed service providers and how to sell to people like me. And I think it's a really great topic. I think that there's a lot to be learned, along with a lot to hear, because sometimes the people who come up with the go-to market strategies are very far removed from the actual salespeople who are selling.
No, I agree. And even 15 years ago, I ran into that. I think as we go through this, we'll talk about some of the goods, the bads, the indifference, some of the things that change, some of the things that stay the same, and I think some of the things that we can do on both sides to make it work. So before we dig into the trust, maybe we can start just your take on the relationship between a partner and a vendor anyways today, right? What is that relationship in your mind? What does it need to look like? What's the value of that? How do you view that relationship? Vendor, you, customer. I know. Sorry, I had to start there.
It's a big ecosystem, albeit we need each other. The customers need me to bring solutions to them to help them run and protect their business. The partners that I work with need to bring in sales. We need to have those relationships in order to sell to my clients, because often they do not have that relationship with the customer. They're just selling to channel people. And I think that ecosystem has to have quite a balance. The vendors have to understand what I need. I have to let them know what I need, and we have to set equal expectations around that. I would imagine that if I called the vendor all the time for quotes, but never use them, would they rush to answer those quotes for me? If I do business with someone who doesn't come through in the way they told me, if the expectations they set are not met, you know what I'm going to say. Right. They're likely dead to me. So, but that ecosystem can be very well fed. There are times that I learn about something new that I'm not even offering yet, or that a client doesn't have a need for yet. I think a lot of vendors sometimes don't understand that the SMB market does not ask for specific services. They're not asking for things. We're making recommendations based on what we see in their infrastructure or what they need for growth or protection. So, when they come to me and say, well, when a customer asks for this, and I'm like, no, the customer has never heard of that. They're not asking for that. But it's great for me to get educated by the vendor. So then when I see the need somewhere, we can then apply it, or we can then work together. But I do think there is a very special relationship, because know who you're going to go to for what in most cases, especially if they are doing the right thing by you.
Okay.
And that can mean a lot of things, Steven.
Yeah. Well, let's start with, so how do you build that trust, right? Let's take it all, from a foundational level, kind of both ways. You've been doing this for a little while, I would assume, right? Actually, yeah, you've been doing this job at CMIT for over 8 years, right?
Correct.
So
yeah, it's the same thing a client looks for in me. You're going to do business with who you like, trust, or think are smart for the most part, right? They understand their product. They're available to you. They educate. They give you fair pricing and so forth. So, or they're the only one in the market, because I often ask vendors, especially when I'm in a room with 7 people selling the same thing, what's your differentiator? Why you versus the next one? As we know, many of these services have become a commodity, so I can go to multiple people for the same exact thing. So why choose them? And I think, over the years, I have relationships with certain people. That way, even if they move to other companies, I'm still working with them, because it's them who I meet, who I have the relationship with and who I know is going to take care of me. In some instances, though, it's the product, and you have to take a chance on the person you work with. But at the end of the day, we're all people working with people. It's not like it's just about the service, because you can likely get that replicated from many other places. Same as I would say to my clients, why choose me? I have to make sure that I have something to offer that makes them decide to do business with me versus the next MSP.
I like we said that people do business with people that they like, they trust, and think are smart. I think that brings it in, that brings it into focus pretty narrowly. I do a question for you. I've got lots of questions for you. The first one is, and maybe it's a little bit different now, how many key vendors do you work with? Back in my day, I was a managed service provider, and I sold somewhat similar to you. I sold to between 50 and 400 people, kind of sort of that mid-market. And I probably had 5 key vendors that made off my managed service. And then I had other commodities I could work around. I mean, I'm curious what it's like today for you.
Well, I would say the bit of a difference being part of a franchise is a little bit more power in the marketplace, because we have, there's a lot of buying power when you have 250 owners serving, thousands of customers. So I would say there is a vetted portion of this that is required as a franchisee, but unlike a Starbucks, I can bake and sell my own brownies if I choose. So, and also the stack has become that much more diverse. MSPs aren't answering just support anymore. We're answering connectivity. We're answering cloud movement and migration. We're answering licensing, along with security, of course, and in some cases, physical equipment. So many. I don't know that I can click off how many. And sometimes, I don't only use one VoIP provider, one security provider, one connectivity provider. So it's better to be more concise and to have and grow those relationships. But there is a lot these days that we have to make part of our offering. So where you might have worked with 5 or 8, I'm probably working with 15, at high points.
Is that better or worse?
Depends.
I'm
competitively, it depends on what. Yeah, it depends on what. And again, I'm looking for a differentiator in some cases. who does this the best or who does this the closest or well, because ultimately the trust relationship with the client is mine. So I have to bring in people that, offer up the right solutions for me at the right price.
I think it was easier for me. And you can tell me what you think. Because actually people want to listen to you today and not me. But when I only had 5, it was easier for me to build a trust because it was just a smaller number, right? And so it's interacting more often with the same group. And in my size of an organization, it was just easier with that number. When you start to get to 8 to 15 and building that trust on a regular basis, I could see that get somewhat extended. Okay, 2-part question. I also think it'd be really cool, those people that you build a great trust with in those 15, it's going to be a big differentiator because you feel like you can rely on them versus it being kind of like wait and see sort of stuff.
Well, I would say in certain areas and with certain solutions, it's definitely 1 or 2, but I don't think you can only have one vendor for each thing. I think that is sometimes a problem, both from a cost perspective, from a support perspective, same as, the reason that people don't have an IT employee anymore and have a team outsourced, because you need to have backup to that solution. If someone leaves, moves, sells their company, changes hands, you lose your account rep, it might be time to move on. And I've seen that happen, certainly even in my short tenure in this business. So, I think it has its ups and its downs for sure. But I think because we're a larger entity, we get a lot more consistent support too, where I know there are many MSPs out there who get switched around constantly depending on, the size of their business.
Yeah, we're definitely running in a different world. I wasn't in a franchise world, so I didn't have that buying power.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about this trust. What do you look for in a vendor? What differentiates them? What makes them somebody you trust, and how do they go about it, right?
Well, I've been fortunate that over the last couple of years, I've been part of kind of a women's technical organization. So I've met a lot of channel partners through there. And that has led to both referrals from them as well as business to them, which has been great and probably unheard of for the most part for women, especially MSPs, because there's not a lot of female-owned MSPs. But I think I would say the most important thing around the vendor relationship for me is someone who is going to take the ball and run with it to completion. Someone whose job I don't have to explain to them. I sell a lot of things. They sell one typically. I want them to be the expert in both delivery and support to getting the client onboarded or educating me or my team so that we can help support it. Someone who is responsive, and not like next day, but really, really responsive, and who cares. I would say it's the most important thing in a client, in a vendor, and in an employee is you care about it a lot.
Okay. So how long does it take you to build that relationship? What's the Leslie trust factor, right? And it matters, right?
I'm a trust first, Steven. I am a trust first.
Okay.
I am not suspect of people until they make me suspect.
Okay.
And maybe that's a bad quality to have. But as far as forming a relationship, it's twofold. I like what they sell, and I like what they tell me about what they sell, and then they have to prove it. And that's the other thing, is leveraging that not in your largest client sometimes, but in your first small client, somewhere where we can make mistakes without a high payment. And I'm going to find out too from, when you're in a franchise and there's multiple owners, good and bad news travel really fast. I can tell you what travels faster.
Yes, exactly. So that's pretty interesting. So yeah, if it goes wrong with one of those 250, I think everybody finds out pretty quickly.
Look, I could tell you the story if you want to hear it. And they're definitely dead to me. I'm not going to mention who it is, of course.
Okay, I was going to say, you tell me your worst story, and I'll tell you my worst story. Let's hold on.
I'm going to go with mine being worse.
Okay, okay. But before we get into that, and we'll come back, I think we'll sort of wrap up with the stories because we're going to talk about the good, bad, and ugly on that. So what about the other way around? So, the vendors have to build the trust. You're in a pretty interesting spot because you've got 250 brethren in there that you can go back and forth. Once again, not everybody has that. So the vendors have to build the trust. But what about you building, the trust the other way, right? In your thinking of that perspective, is there a light bulb that goes off at some point with a vendor when they realize, hey, this company's really good and there's huge opportunities and they've met my criteria there. So again, you're a little unique in that you've got 250 people you could work with on that. But I'm sort of curious. So Leslie, what about the other way around? What about in today's world, the partner proving some trust to the vendor? What does that look like today? We talked a little bit about the vendor needing to be trustworthy to the partner.
So I think, something I mentioned earlier about not asking for a zillion quotes that never come through, not taking advantage. I know that, vendors always are asking me to go out places and go to events and go to things. And when you're not bringing them business, I think after a while it gets a little, like where they either stop inviting you or kind of looking at you sideways that you're taking advantage of something that you shouldn't be. Years ago, I used to work a lot of conference tables and, Javits and things like that. And we put things out and some people would come by and just swipe up the whole table. And you'd be like, really? I'm sure that's what vendors feel like when you come to their events and you're not doing business with them. But then again, it's in their best interest to be top of mind, to be in front of you and to make sure that they're educating you constantly so you can look for opportunities to partner.
So in your opinion, this trust between the vendor and the partner, is it getting better or is it getting worse, right? Is it moving in the right direction where you feel like in the market that the alignment is getting better on that, or is it kind of going the other way?
I don't know if it's either. I would say there's way more competition. I mean, I know many, many vendors in probably each product and service I sell. And, do I choose to just stick with one all the time, taking care of me a certain way? I certainly think that there is like I said, a great balance there. Getting a lead from a vendor is amazing because it almost never happens. And sometimes I question when I go to certain events, when it just seems to be very social. And then all of a sudden I get a lead from a vendor event, which is always kind of mind blowing. And I think that's really helpful because they want, MSPs to work with them. We become your salespeople to sell these products and services. We want to make sure that you're feeding us as well. When you hear either from a customer looking at your services or from just being out in the marketplace that someone needs an MSP, you're likely going to feed the people who feed you.
Yeah, I did read on your LinkedIn profile, and people can check it out, that you do like to get out and about. I think there are some very happy photographs of you being out and about on your LinkedIn profile, which is a great thing, right? If I'm a vendor,
too social.
it'd be a great thing.
Yeah, a little too social for my own good. But I think it's led to the relationships that either I've gotten business from or do business because of or with. And I also think, if you get some face time with different people and learn a little bit about what they do and who they are, it takes you a long way. And we've done this both in social events, but also in charity events, fundraising events, award nights, things like that, where, we come out for the people that we support and support us.
Yeah, I think I saw that you were a big soccer fan on that. I thought I saw a post on that, right?
I had a great opportunity, nothing better than a Yankee fan who gets to see their brand in Yankee Stadium.
Okay, that's pretty cool. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that? What was that all about?
I decided now that if I do not stay working as an MSP, that I can be a lobbyist. It took so much work to get a bunch of tri-state owners to kick in for this opportunity to advertise with NYCFC and become an associate partner. This brilliant idea comes out of the UK, or a company called 11, and 11 was looking for 30 relevant small businesses in the area for this opportunity. None to kind of overlap, and they were everything from construction, window washing, nursing homes, IT. And with that, we're at every home game. We're up on the digital signage, on the televisions. We get to network and socialize with each other. It's really been a fun opportunity. And I am a soccer fan. I am a Yankee fan. So it was great. Like the first time it ever came up, I think it was on Father's Day 2 years ago. And their social channels are really, they've highlighted me. They've done some stuff for me and for the rest of the Northeast, and it's been great. So it was kind of cool.
I would think that the vendors really like that. You said that. I would think, if you've got partners who are getting out there and connecting, I would view that from a vendor perspective as, that's a great opportunity. That's someone who wants to go out and have connections. That's going to help me get connected to my ultimate customer. That's a really, really good thing.
I also think that, on the side of it being like fueled by women, a lot of us have really been able to lift each other up. I'm of that age where there was only room for one. And I worked for my mother who, had a woman-owned business. She was an entrepreneur. There's a lot of women in my office. This business does not leverage itself to that many females. And I think that there was a lot of backbiting when I was younger. So when I see these women mentoring each other and helping each other and looking for opportunities, both to socialize together, but also to work together and learn about their products and services, that inspires me. I also have two daughters. So, I look at it for them as well, that there'll be room for more than one.
Okay, I'm in the $2 club, so I can have this. I'm a feminist, and I'm in the $2 club, so I can have this. I can have this conversation. And one of the things that attracted me to you as well too is I just thought, look, if there's a woman who can run a managed service business in New York, in Manhattan, that's freaking cool. That's the first thing I thought about, is like, how cool is that? Look, when I was a managed service provider, I'm not so sure I met a woman that was running a managed service at that point.
I know it.
80% of the techs were men. I would say I had about 20, and I had about 80-20 split male, female.
Yeah.
Back to that point, right?
Which is pretty good. But I would, it's like I complain to some of the larger vendors. I go to events and all the women on the main stage are marketing or HR. They're never head of tech. They're never head of engineering, none of that.
I think that'll change. Here's where I think it's changing. We're doing total off track. This is one thing. I'm seeing more women in the channel leading sales. And it used to be in marketing. And I'm seeing like two of the best sales just people I know in the channel right now are women. And I don't actually, my dad made me colorblind, gender blind. I don't even think about it. Right? So I'm just like, oh yeah, you're great at what you do. But I had to notice, because of my daughters and paying attention to that, right? I mean, you have to, that, how do you get past? And by the way, it's very cool to do marketing. It's very cool to do HR.
No doubt.
It's nice to see it expand out to be able to do sales, right?
Well, that to me is not surprising, just because I feel like women are always leveraged in a sales opportunity, maybe not in the channel as much as now, but, I would love to see there be more on the tech side, especially in the larger companies, a little bit more representation, but it is what it is.
Okay. Well, you don't sound like someone who accepts it is what it is very often. So you can say that, but I don't actually, it's difficult.
It's difficult to get people to go down this track, and then they have to be competitive. So, it's, that's why it lends itself where it is. I think it will get there, especially technology. I think part of the reason for that is that things were larger, heavy to carry, all those things, where now, with so much more being tiny and cloud-based, there's a lot less schlepping of stuff.
Well, actually, that changed a lot of things. I was thinking that changed how MDF worked. It changed how product got demonstrated. So that's pretty fast. It's the first time I thought about that change, who could actually physically do the role. That's actually a great point. And I got to admit, I've been doing this for a while. I never actually thought about that. Okay, that's actually a pretty cool thought. Okay, so gender aside, you got the vendor and the partner relationship, all the good things we talked about. So what happens when a vendor breaks that? And you can tell your story and I'll tell my horror story. Let's talk about what happens when it breaks. And then we tell a story. And then I'm interested, have any vendors actually won it back? Or once it's broken, it's gone? So that's a 3-part question.
Well, I will say, in thinking about our discussion, one of the things that I considered was how they handle things when they go wrong. Because as an MSP, as you'd imagine, I often compare us to an ER, right? Some people are going to die. Some people are going to leave with a limp. Other people are going to leave perfectly fine. We are never going to be perfect. It's never going to be 100%. It's not the nature of technology or the work we do. So we need to set client expectations, same as vendors need to set ours. Here's what needs to happen to get the job done right. We need to empower the vendor to get through the job. If they screw up, there needs to be, an opening for them to make it right. And that is the second part to it. It's not just getting it right 100% of the time, because that's not real. Things are going to happen. But making sure that when you reach out to them, whether it be on a Saturday night when they're off on their yacht cruise, or they are at home on a Monday morning working remotely, that they're responding to what's wrong, that they're answering that ticket, that they're escalating that issue. Because the salesperson often, has no control over the implementation, just like I don't. I'm not that technical. It's on my team to get that done, and we have to make sure that we set the expectations with the client. So I think it's threefold, right? It's, doing the best job you've represented, right? If the vendor tells me the expectation, the report's going to take 20 days, but it takes 80, I'm going to be upset. And so is the client, and the client's going to be upset with me. And if I'm passing on that trust relationship, right? The client doesn't know who my salesperson is. The client knows me. So everything comes back to me. So they have to be an extension of how I would handle things. And that's kind of the first part to it. Getting it right, yay, we're all happy. When it goes wrong, I need to be able to reach out, and they don't go, well, I don't handle that part. They find the person, they escalate the issue, they give me the home phone numbers of whoever I need to call to make sure my client is satisfied with what we've brought in. Because if that doesn't happen, then I won't be using them again for sure. And if they handle the problem correctly, sometimes the tool or the service we buy is fantastic, but if the delivery's not there, you're already put off. Like, I shouldn't have done this. Why did we do this? This is not good. This is not what they told me we were selling to the customer. And that's happened. But I think, giving them the space to make mistakes is fine, as long as they're going to handle that. But really the best partner for me is someone who I hand off the business to. I tee it up for us to both be successful, and they get it done. And if there are blips or service needed after, they're not like, oh, that's not my part. They actually get the rest of it done. So it's out of my hands. They all claim they can do it, but not all of them will.
So what's your horror story?
This is good. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right. Unnamed VoIP supplier. So I worked with a customer, a very large client, for 2 rounds of demos around this. And instead of just bringing in one vendor, I brought in several. I acted as the VAR, right? I wanted to be the value-added resource, come in with a consultative approach and not just like lead somebody by the hand. It's this person, right? So that's what I did. I did that twice. Never charged the client to do the work, just acted as the consultant. Second round, I spoke to their incumbent, who was charging them a little bit more money than they should. Started to have a pretty good relationship with them and talked to them about what it would take to save the client, what we wanted it to look like, be priced at, and they came in really well. So I brought in 2 vendors to the client, and I said, we can't really pick a bad choice here. We can, but it is going to be a heavier lift to move off this one and go to that one, where we can just save money and do all the other things you want to do with this one. Now, the other vendor, more famous, much bigger, and had a lot of good tools. The clients, so like a couple weeks before they made a decision, I share this account with another IT person, walk them in, and I thought, oh, good, he's supporting me on this. This is great. We'll do this together. When it came down to it, they picked the larger supplier, and we started to have a battle over who, and I registered this deal. I used the section, the vertical that I needed to for expertise, along with enterprise, because it was a larger deal. I did all the right things. Suddenly my registration was missing. And they basically, instead of taking the position that I had started all this paperwork, they said, we're going to go first to ink. Well, the CEO was with the other person. The COO was with me, and the other person got the deal. And so I will never sell that vendor again, because they could have taken the position they should have. Why register a deal if you're not going to hold that registration? Why bother going through all these steps? They had all the paperwork. They had all of the messaging back and forth, and they still let the customer decide, which is okay. I understand their position to a certain degree. And I think there was a lot of untruths in the middle of that somehow. But, I said, from now on, if I ever do that much work again, I'm going to charge the client, or tell the client, because the client also then found out like how the payouts go, which they should never have known because I never charged them a dime, nor would I. But next time I would just say, if I'm going to put in all this work to the phone system and you don't use me, there's going to be a charge for it. It was a lot of money too. The spiff was a lot.
Here's the thing. I've run the technology side of incentives and deal registrations and all that. That's what I've been doing for the past 15 years since I left being a partner. People ask me about deal registration all the time. There's a lot of advantages to both sides on it, right? Because the vendor can understand the pipeline, and the partner is supposedly protected on that. It's so key for everything, and when it runs well, it runs really well. But that's cardinal sin number one. If you don't adhere to that, you're dead to me.
That was a tough burn, but that's one of those lessons that you learn hard and you don't do it again.
My perspective, there's no coming back from that.
Yeah. And, again, I think I don't like to take a negative approach to these things, right? Brush it off. Next, what's new? What's happening? What are we doing? Because if you sit yourself in that space, you'll just think everybody's a crook and everybody lies. And, I never want to be like that. I really enjoy learning about new products and services. I really enjoy working with different people, especially great people, because I've worked with many more fantastic, helpful, educated resources than the opposite. And, that was just, not a great day.
Well, no, one of the things that I thought was interesting, and when you were doing your presentation, is I found you very positive, very upbeat, and very enthusiastic. That's why I reached out to do you about a podcast. But I also felt like if someone did something like that, as you said, they were dead to you, which is what you said on stage. And I was like,
what the audience repeated back to me, which was the best part of that whole afternoon.
Whoa! Absolutely. Look, my story, I'll tell it pretty quickly. It's very similar. Did deal registration. We took a vendor into it was a citywide account. It was a pretty big account. And we were a mid-sized partner. And we went and did all of it. You got the whole thing going. And they turned it over to a regional partner. And then I found out that the salesperson running the deal for the vendor's spouse worked for that company that came in and that was a huge deal for us, right? For us in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands. It was a pretty big annual deal. And I was shell shocked. I was like, is this for real? Same thing, my deal registration. I'm not sure where I got lost. And what was I going to do? There was nothing I could do. But I was like, you just burned that bridge so bad.
I also, I want to put my head on a pillow at night. I would never have done the opposite. The funny thing is, when the other IT person became involved, all I could think about was, what should I give him? Like, maybe I should give him a split. Like, I really wanted to be generous about it. And that really burned doubly.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And I'm the same thing. Was not selfish.
But, he's suffering the consequences of it already. So, it's like, no, it's no skin. I've, long gone past it, but I will never do business with that particular company again. Even if the client asked, I'd probably tell them the story.
Yeah. And from my perspective, it just wasn't worth the time anymore. And same thing. What are you going to do about it? I just wrote it off and just moved on. And you find an alternative and just makes the best of it. Life's too short for that.
Yep. 100%. And like I said, I have one of the things that I find so interesting about VoIP is, there are many people who just use one vendor. It's easier to do that, same dashboard if you need help, same this, same that. But for me, I love VoIP as a business solution. I love the idea that customers have certain requirements that not every carrier can meet, along with the fact that it's not all their own. So maybe they have a third-party contact center, or they have, and I'm still a fan of the outsource of that, but there are so many pieces to put together and really bring somebody something great with the ability to grow their business because of it, versus just picking up and saying hello and setting up a call flow or having IVR. There's so much more to be gained now. And that's the part I find so interesting in that space.
Okay, so let's wrap it up. Listening to the partner, and trusting how they need to take in that information to be able to do, how to get educated. It's not like, I think in some semblance of the world with some of the videos, we've lost the essence of what are we trying to get across? Are we trying to just say something glitzy, or are we actually trying to educate, right? And you got to do it in small amounts.
I just want to add something that I was just on a call the other day, and I was working with a VoIP provider, and they have kind of hypercare in place for the first 90 days. And I thought a lot about that as an MSP as well. There, when you first onboard a client, they need a much more direct line from you than they do 3 months, 6 months, a year down the road in most cases. And I think developing that and making sure that their initial kind of onboard is handheld, especially with VoIP, because VoIP applies to everything, because it's like if the connectivity is bad, your computers might work, but your phones will experience it, right? They don't take up a lot of bandwidth, but they're also super important to most people's businesses, even if they're not using a physical phone.
Right.
So I think, a bunch of hand-holding up front in that kind of space is something else I look in for in a vendor. The fact that there's going to be support, and that I hate using that term, one throat to choke. I'd much rather have one back to pat any day of the week.
So that's interesting that you say that, right? So I think a trust thing there on the vendors is, I love that customer in the beginning. For me, I looked at it as like over that first 90 days, they could either make the renewal for me and my life for my whole team really, really great for the next 2 years, or they could make it miserable for 6 months.
You're 100% right.
Those
100% right.
2 options, right? And I was like, all you have to do is, here's the deal. The thing that I cared most about in all my implementations is my project manager had to get a 95% plus CSAT rating on the setup and the installation. That was my biggest metric, because I knew, and by the way, this is 15 years ago, right? And I knew that that was going to make all the difference. And I had some vendors that really bought into that, and some that didn't. Once again, the ones that did, they were the ones I used, right? Because I wanted those people to love us, right?
Yep. You wanted the care, and they wanted the care from you. But it also, I talk a lot about what is the client's love language. Do they need follow-up? Do they need details? Do they need a call right back? Or do they need you to just communicate, we're on it, we got you? So I think paying attention to that, back to their expectation and their trust, is what do they need from you? If you're not giving it, you're gone.
Well, see,
you're dead to me.
You're gone. This is what, if I'm a vendor, this is what I want to hear from my partner. That's what's going to help me build trust in my partner, is because they're actually listening to what does that client need over that period of time. Because we all have that same goal over that first beginning of that 90 days to get the client in a great space, right? So,
and just to add to it, Steven, part of the Forrester thing that was a big deal to me was the fact that, again, you have these like big heads of companies at these events. And what I hope they take from what they see here is the fact that sometimes their strategy doesn't match, where, 3 layers down, what it looks like. Like we used to always say to an older boss of mine, like, you're not the one in front of the customer. So you don't get it. This is what I'm hearing in the marketplace. And I'll tell you the biggest thing for MSPs, to me, the biggest shift, we might have to hide this. Back in the day when you were doing this, right, it was newer. I mean, it still had been around for a while, but part of the relationship was the expectation that you weren't going to be there a lot. It wasn't a co-managed thing. They were used to Larry, who lives up, 2 blocks away, coming by whenever something broke. And MSP was a little bit of a larger engagement with a monthly retainer, right? Now, many of the sales opportunities I come across for requests for proposals that I'm answering want to see somebody, whether it's on a monthly call, whether it's on in a quarterly meeting, whether it's a technician that comes by once a week for 3 hours. They want more engagement. They want more hand-holding, more touchy-feely, because everything they do is connected to technology. And even people who think they're technical don't often want to touch anything or mess with anything. They want help, or they want a special engagement for the VIPs in their office, things like that. And that, to me, is the current shift of what's happening. So our vendors are going to have to shift with us to more hand-holding, to more being part of our actual team in some cases to support clients.
Especially in the beginning. And I agree. Okay, my second nightmare story is I worked in the winery business. And I mean, I had like really nice wines. And this whole managed service thing was starting to come around. And we made all these promises with our vendors, and we went in there and we basically were telling them, we don't need to be here to take care of you. And we sort of missed the point that they missed, and they expected Larry to come around. And even though we did a great job, they let us go 6 months later. And I remember sitting in a bar in Napa, and the general manager came over, and he's got a case of wine. And it was like 2007 Pritchard Hill. I mean, it was nice stuff. And he fired me with a really nice case of wine. He goes, look, you guys are really good, but my owner, that's not what
Not for him.
Not for him.
And that's the thing. If you don't figure that out, if you don't find out what that is almost right from the start, you're going to find it out from a problem, usually. I think going over the expectations is that much more critical. RFPs are usually stacked for a specific vendor, whether it's, something regulated where they have to go to RFP every couple of years, or whether, Larry's daughter now has an MSP that they know they're going to give it to. But you do get the parameters. And if you're answering to them, right, and you're setting a proposal, and they said, well, you told us we were going to have somebody here every Tuesday from 9 to 12, and you don't meet that, you're probably done.
Pretty interesting. I learned to ask questions a lot better after that, and to make sure that those questions were funneled up a lot better after that as well, too. So that was big.
Well, if you're not learning from those mistakes, you're dead.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And my vendor wasn't very happy. I wasn't very happy, but I never made that mistake again. Hey, I want to go down a track real quickly before we wrap up that I wasn't even going to go down.
Sure.
Because I'm in the platform and I'm in the demand generation business. I thought I would ask. So how do you view MDF? How do you view demand generation and help with co-branding of materials and information, right? You're part of a big group. Do you guys get a lot of MDF funding? Do you get a through channel marketing automation platform or anything like that to do demand generation?
So maybe I'm not understanding the question specifically. Are you talking about support from the vendors that we work with?
Right. So, yeah. So
MDF,
market development funds, MDF dollars that they give to you for
So
marketing, digital advertising, any sort of demand generation activities that you might.
So the larger vendors that work with us that are vetted and we have to use to support the marketing efforts of our home office, I believe, along with us, depending on our spend. So, I have thrown like a security awareness breakfast, the vendor, that I put in paperwork for, and the vendor supported the breakfast. I don't ask for it all that much, only because I don't necessarily go down the track of educating around one particular product. It's usually the whole. Not that they necessarily need that; they just need to know the parameters in order to support you. But I think it's great. I think it's helpful. I think that even I'm about to do. We have our CMIT conference in November, and I had asked if I could do a session because a lot of the time franchisee-led sessions are the more popular ones. We learn something from you. And I think I'm going to partner with a vendor in that one to be able to benefit what I was going to talk about in the first place, which was kind of farming your current client base. So we're looking to put together some type of template to help not only me, but all of the owners across the country. So, clients, if you're doing the right job, they want more. They're consuming more, not less. They're not cutting your engagement. They're saying, what else do we need? Come in every year, tell us how old our machines are, where there might be security gaps. Should we migrate to cloud? Do we need more equipment? Whatever it is. And I think, that lends itself to vendors wanting to support that too, obviously. So back to your question, MDF's important, but a lot of franchise owners, in my opinion, don't know it exists as far as for themselves.
Interesting. Here's one of the interesting things for me is I sold risk mitigation and business continuity. I always had vendors coming to me, and look, this is traditional. I had the traditional group of vendors back then. It's not hard to figure out virtualization, servers, laptop, security. It's pretty straightforward stuff, right? And I said, I sold risk mitigation and business continuity. And I'm back. I'm thrilled that I'm a gold or a platinum partner for you, and I use a backstop. But the message I was trying to get up is your lights are always on and it's always secure. And you could be 15 years ago, vendors didn't get that, and all the stuff they would hand me for marketing were just about their product.
Right.
I do think it's getting better to the point where I think some of them are starting to understand that how to blend that message, and there are AI tools and things out there that are pretty interesting. And I'll show you one of the things that we do that allows you to take your message and their message and blend it together for a quick email campaign.
Which is great.
It's really, really cool stuff. You got to be able to blend it. And it's funny, historically, through channel marketing automation tech platforms, didn't get a lot of partners coming in because just putting your logo on a vendor's collateral.
Right. It's not enough. And if you can't speak well to it, like, forget it.
And it's not your value prop anyway. I kept thinking about it. I was like, why did the vendors miss it? Your value prop is your relationship and everything we've been talking about, and understanding what that client wants, when, where, and how, right? So help me figure out how to do that. And I think AI and where technology is going, pretty soon you're going to have like a little, we call it a marketing assistant that'll just sit there right there, and you could just ask it for collateral, and it'll have all of your information in there, and it'll crown an email or a landing page or anything you want to do, collateral for when you go to one of those events, and it'll blend the message, and you don't have to spend 4 days doing it. I think that's pretty cool. And I think a lot of vendors are going to start sending that sort of stuff your way.
You know, to circle back, I was talking with a particular vendor yesterday, and they were like, well, when your clients ask for and this and that, and I was like, my clients don't ask for that. They're never going to know what that is. Educate me. Where's the opportunity so I can look for it when I'm talking to clients or prospects? Let me know. Like, to me, this particular company, the opportunity is if I talk to a prospect who already has that and I need to move it, that makes sense. But to initiate that step, most of the customers that we work with do not need certain things that I don't know who's buying from them. I am pretty sure there are larger customers out there that 100% need what they have. But I said, educate me, tell me where the opportunity is, and I'll let you know if it's something that I come across or it's something I'll look for. Like, I had a client who doesn't answer phone calls. Like, they just don't. They get 65% of their calls. They're losing a fortune. I've been telling them this for the last 4 years. And when I intimated that we should get a inbound, outbound call center for them, they were like, no way. They're used to this person answering the phone or that person answering the phone. I said, okay. All of a sudden they came around. Now they've come so far around, they're ready for it to be an AI receptionist. And I'm like, wait, how did we go from Joan not answering the phone to AI? So we're still working on the opportunity, but it is kind of funny because, you want to make sure you don't miss any calls, and voicemail is not enough. And if you are a medical practice and a new patient calls and you don't pick up, guess what they're doing? Calling somebody else right away. They are not leaving a voicemail as a new patient, most likely.
Okay. All right. Well, look, this has been great. I appreciate you taking all this time to talk to me about this.
I appreciate you having me.
So last thing, if anybody wants to reach out and pick your brain, get to know you a little bit.
Oh, Lord, there's so little in my brain left, Steven. I don't know how much they can pick at.
What's the best way? Well, obviously you found time to go to Forrester. You found time to go to about the channel focus. So, you're... That
I did. They should reach out on LinkedIn is probably the easiest way. Or, certainly I can provide a slide for Chris that he can post up with, my contact information.
All right. Well, Leslie, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Listeners, viewers, thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or reach out to Leslie, and go see a NYSC soccer game next time.
Well, and more importantly, make sure you do the right thing by your partners so that you're not dead to them or dead to me.
Wow, that is a much better ending. All right. Thank you, Leslie. Appreciate it.
Take care, Steven. Talk soon.